Leora stood in the grand hall, her heart beating fast as she faced the crowd. The chandeliers above cast a pale, flickering light over the nobles, their eyes full of curiosity, judgment, and amusement. Tonight was supposed to be her moment of destiny. The moonlight had chosen her. The prophecy had whispered her name, and her fated mate, Prince Kale, was meant to welcome her. But Kale's eyes, cold and sharp, looked through her as though she were invisible. A cruel smile tugged at his lips. "I do not accept this fate," he said loudly, his voice echoing through the hall. "I will have no bond with her. She is not mine." A hush fell over the room. Gasps of shock rippled through the nobles and whispers spread like wildfire. Leora's chest tightened. She had known the legends, had believed in the bond that fate promised, but now that belief shattered. Her hands trembled, and the papers marking her as Kale's fated mate felt heavy in her grip. She had never felt such humiliation. Tears threatened to spill, but she held her head high. Pride, stubborn and unyielding, kept her upright. Yet the ache in her chest was undeniable. The one person who was meant to see her, to choose her, had rejected her. From the shadowed corner of the hall, a figure stepped forward. The room seemed to grow darker, colder, and yet strangely warmer at the same time. King Darius, the Alpha King. The ruler whose very presence demanded obedience, whose voice could command storms. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like dark amber fire. His face was carved with experience, and though he was feared by many, there was a quiet loneliness in him, hidden beneath the armor of his power. Darius's gaze fell on Leora, and she felt a pull in her chest. He did not look at her with the hunger or arrogance that Kyle had, but with something more complex: curiosity, concern, and an almost invisible longing. "Enough," Darius said, his deep voice rolling over the crowd like thunder. "This ends now." Kale's smirk faltered. "Father, I said it ends." Darius's eyes, sharp and commanding, cut through Kale's protests. Then he turned slowly to Leora. "You will come with me. You are mine to protect, whether he chooses to accept it or not." The hall erupted into shocked whispers. Leora's stomach twisted. The Alpha King was claiming her? The idea was terrifying and yet strangely safe. Darius did not demand her love yet. He did not pretend to be kind. But there was a weight to his protection that made her heart race, a certainty that Kale had never offered. Before she could speak, Darius extended his hand. "Come," he said simply. The nobles stared. Kale's face was pale with rage and disbelief. Leora hesitated. Every instinct told her to run, to refuse, to fight for what she had thought she wanted. But the cold, lonely truth of the hall pressed against her. Kyle had rejected her. The bond she thought was destiny had betrayed her. And now, standing before her was someone who could offer safety, strength, and perhaps something else she could not yet name. Slowly, carefully, Leora took Darius's hand. The moment her fingers brushed his, a strange warmth spread through her, unlike anything she had felt before. It was not the heat of desire, but the spark of connection, deep, ancient, and binding. "Do not fear," Darius murmured. "I will not let anyone harm you. Not him, not the court, not the shadows that watch from the forest." They left the hall together, the crowd's whispers following them like a river of sound. Leora felt her cheeks burn with a mix of shame and awe. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp, the moon high above casting silver light over the castle walls. "Where are you taking me?" Leora asked, her voice small. "To a place where you will be safe," Darius replied. His eyes lingered on hers, unreadable and yet heavy with meaning. "And where you can learn your true strength." The castle's gates closed behind them as they walked in silence. Leora's mind raced. The Alpha King had claimed her, but why? Was it pity? Was it desire? Or something else entirely? She could feel the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. She was no longer merely a girl rejected by her fated mate. She was now the subject of a king's claim, the focus of a power she did not yet understand. They arrived at a secluded tower on the edge of the castle grounds. The walls were dark stone, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Inside, the room was warm, lit by a roaring fire. Books and scrolls lined the shelves, and in the center, a small desk held instruments of study and symbols of magic. Leora had never been anywhere like this. "This will be your new home," Darius said. "You will learn. You will grow. And you will discover the truth about your bond and about yourself." Leora's eyes searched his face. "And what if I do not want this?" You have little choice, he said gently yet firmly. The world is cruel to those who refuse their destiny. But you are not powerless, not if you trust yourself and me. For days, Leora struggled with her new reality. Darius did not force her to obey. He allowed her space, but he never let her forget that he held power over her safety, over her place in the kingdom. He was strict, demanding, and yet patient. When she faltered in her lessons of sword and strategy, he guided her. When her magic flared uncontrolled, he taught her to channel it. Slowly, slowly, Leora began to see the man behind the legend. Darius was not cruel. He was sharp, yes, and he could be harsh, but he was also protective, thoughtful, and patient in a way Kale had never been. When she struggled to rise after a failed attempt at magic, he caught her hand. You are stronger than you know, he said softly. Stronger than you believe. You must believe it too. Her heart betrayed her. Despite herself, she felt a flicker of trust and something more. She wanted his approval. She wanted his respect. The stirrings of something deep and forbidden began to bloom, and she tried to fight it. She had been rejected by her fated mate. She should not feel drawn to this man. And yet every glance, every word, every touch of guidance made her pulse quicken. One night, Leora wandered to the balcony of her tower. The moon hung low, a silver crown over the dark forest beyond the castle. She thought of Kale, and the bitterness of his rejection twisted in her chest. And yet she thought of Darius too, and a strange warmth spread through her, confusing and thrilling. Behind her, a shadow moved. Darius stepped onto the balcony, his presence quiet but undeniable. You should not stand here alone, he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of command. I needed air, Leora replied, trying to steady her trembling hands. I'm still angry at him. He studied her, the firelight from the room behind him catching in his eyes. Anger is natural, but do not let it poison you. It is not his rejection that defines you. It is your choices now. Your courage, your strength. Leora felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to speak, to confess her confusion, her fear, her growing respect and fear of attraction. But no words came. Instead, Darius reached out, resting his hand lightly on her shoulder. Not possessively, but reassuringly. The contact sent a spark through her that she could not deny. She stepped back slightly overwhelmed, yet she did not flee. She could not rest, Darius said. Tomorrow you will face more challenges. But I will be here, always. Leora watched him leave, her heart heavy and light at once. She realized, with a mixture of fear and awe, that she was no longer merely a girl rejected by fate. She was at the beginning of something dangerous, powerful, and intoxicating. She did not yet understand the full extent of the bond between her and Darius, but she knew it would change everything. And then, in the stillness of the night, a faint, chilling whisper drifted from the forest beyond the castle walls. The bond has shifted. The shadows are awake. She is no longer alone. But neither is she safe. Leora shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. She felt the weight of the world pressing down, the pull of destiny stronger than ever. The Alpha King had claimed her, yes, but the trials ahead were only beginning. And in the darkness of the night, she knew that her life would never be the same again. The moon glimmered on the castle's towers, silver and cold. Somewhere deep in her chest, Leora felt the first spark of something she could not name, fear, excitement, longing, and perhaps a beginning of love that would defy reason and destiny alike. And as the first tendrils of dawn crept across the horizon, she realized the truth. Her journey had only just begun. The forest beyond the castle had never seemed so alive or so dangerous. Shadows twisted between the trees, moving with a life of their own. The whisper that Leora had heard the night before lingered in her mind. She is no longer alone, but neither is she safe. She could feel the pulse of the magic around her, dark and restless, as if the forest itself were testing her. Darius stood beside her, tall and unyielding, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. He had insisted that she accompany him, and though she was frightened, she felt a strange comfort in his presence. He was more than a king. He was a protector, a guide, and increasingly something her heart could not name. You must focus, Darius said quietly, his amber eyes scanning the trees. The forest will not wait for hesitation. The shadows sense fear and they strike at weakness. Leora nodded, gripping the small dagger Darius had given her. She had trained under him for weeks, learning to control her fear and channel her magical energy. She was stronger than she had been, yet the darkness of the forest pressed against her like an invisible weight. A rustle in the underbrush made her start. Darius's hand was suddenly on her shoulder, grounding her. "Steady," he whispered. From the shadows, a creature emerged. A twisted form of darkness with glowing red eyes and claws that seemed to tear at the very air. Leora felt a surge of fear, but then she remembered Darius's words. Strength is found in courage, and courage is born in trust. She raised her dagger, focusing her energy. Together they fought. Darius's sword moved with the precision of a master, and Leora's magic flared, forming a shield of light that repelled the creature. They moved as one, a rhythm forming between them that was both instinctive and powerful. When the last shadow fell, Leora breathed heavily, her heart racing not just from fear, but from the exhilaration of standing beside him. "You did well," Darius said, his voice calm but carrying a warmth that made her chest ache. "You are stronger than you know." Leora met his gaze, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. I could not have done it without you," she admitted softly. Darius's expression softened almost tenderly. "No one fights alone, Leora, not truly. Not when they are bound by fate." The word fate hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Leora's mind flashed to Cale, to his rejection, and then to Darius, who had chosen to claim her, protect her, and guide her. Her heart twisted with conflicting emotions: fear, gratitude, longing, and something deeper, impossible to name. As they returned to the castle, the air was tense but quiet. Leora felt the weight of the bond between her and Darius growing stronger. It was subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. She caught herself glancing at him, noticing the way his jaw tightened when he focused, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, and each time her heart betrayed her. The following days brought new challenges. The court watched her every move, their whispers sharpening like knives. Cale had not given up. He plotted in silence, his pride wounded, his anger simmering. Yet it was not only Cale they had to fear. The curse hinted at by the forest's whispers had begun to manifest. Shadows moved where they should not, and whispers of magic and dark power rippled through the kingdom. Darius guided her through each challenge with a careful balance of discipline and patience. He did not force her to obey, but he demanded focus, courage, and determination. Leora found herself respecting him more deeply than she had expected, admiring not only his power but his wisdom and restraint. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky with fiery orange and deep purple, Darius led Leora to the highest tower of the castle. From there they could see the entire kingdom. Dark forests stretching endlessly in the distance, rivers glimmering in the last light. "You see this kingdom?" Darius asked, his voice low. "It is more than walls and stone. It is alive, filled with magic, danger, and destiny. And now, it is yours to protect as well." Leora swallowed, feeling the enormity of his words. She had never imagined herself capable of such responsibility. "Me? Protect all this?" she asked, incredulous. Darius nodded. "You are more than you believe. The bond that Cale rejected does not define you. Your choices define you, and you are choosing courage." Her chest tightened, and she realized something she had been trying to ignore. The bond with Darius was no longer just protection, it was connection, respect, trust, and the first stirrings of love. She tried to push it aside, reminding herself that he was the Alpha King, that he had power she could not understand, that this bond had begun in unusual circumstances. Yet her heart betrayed her. The next threat came swiftly. Cale, enraged by his rejection and blinded by pride, attempted to seize Leora in the dead of night. He moved with stealth, thinking he could take her before Darius was aware. But Darius had anticipated this. The confrontation was swift and fierce. Cale was skilled, but inexperienced compared to the Alpha King and the woman he had underestimated. Darius moved with lethal precision, his sword striking true while Leora's magic flared with controlled brilliance. Together they defended the castle, and Cale was forced to retreat. Humiliated and defeated, after the battle, Leora collapsed into the warmth of Darius's arms, her body trembling from fear, exhaustion, and relief. He held her, steadying her, and she felt a surge of emotion so strong it took her breath away. "You are safe now," he murmured. "Always." She lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. I don't understand. Why did you claim me? Why me?" Darius's gaze softened, and for a moment the kingly armor fell away, leaving a man vulnerable and honest. Because I saw what fate had planned and I saw what Kale rejected. And because I cannot ignore the truth. You are not just marked by destiny. You are extraordinary, and I could not let you face the world alone. Leora's heart ached with a mix of gratitude, fear, and longing. She had been rejected once, yet here was someone who had chosen her, not for power, not for duty, but for something deeper. Something that stirred her soul in ways she had never known. Days passed and the bond between them deepened. Leora trained harder, learned faster, and faced dangers she had once thought impossible. And through it all, Darius was by her side, guiding her, protecting her, and teaching her not only strength but trust. One night, as they stood on the balcony of the highest tower, watching the moon rise over the forest, Leora dared to speak what had been on her mind for weeks. "Darius, do you feel it too?" Darius turned to her, his eyes reflecting the moonlight, deep and golden. "Feel what, Leora?" "The bond between us. The connection that feels stronger than fear, stronger than destiny. That feels like love." For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he stepped closer, his hand brushing hers lightly. "I have felt it since the moment I saw you rejected. It is not just destiny, Leora, it is choice. And I choose you always." Her heart leapt. The fear, the doubt, the shadows, they all melted in the warmth of his words. She had been rejected once, but now she was claimed by someone who truly saw her, respected her, and above all, would stand beside her through darkness and light. The wind stirred, carrying whispers from the forest. Shadows still lingered and dangers would come, but for the first time Leora did not feel afraid. Not with Darius by her side. As they stood together, hand in hand, the moonlight bathed them in silver. She realized that true destiny was not something forced upon her. It was something she chose. And in this choice, in this bond forged through trials, fear, and trust, she found not only strength but love. And deep in the shadows, a new whisper stirred, softer than before. The bond is real. The light is born from shadow. Together, they are unstoppable. Leora and Darius did not yet know what the future held. The kingdom, the curses, and the unseen forces that lingered would test them further. But in each other, they had found a power stronger than any magic, stronger than any fear, the power of trust, respect, and a love that could face the darkness and shine. The night stretched on, calm and yet full of promise. For Leora, the rejection that had once shattered her heart now seemed like a distant shadow. The Alpha King had claimed her, yes, but more importantly, he had awakened her to her own strength, her own courage, and a love that would not be denied. And so, under the silver glow of the moon, they stood together, two souls bound by choice, by destiny, and by the quiet, unstoppable force of a bond forged in shadow and light.